Good evening. My name is Bob Liff, and this is the CUNY Forum, a monthly town meeting that brings prominent New Yorkers together with faculty and students of the Edward T. Rogowsky Internship Program in Government and Public Affairs. When I look out the window of my office near City Hall, I see the cranes on the site that we have been calling Ground Zero, but which the city's leaders want us to go back to calling the World Trade Center. The main tower, once called the Freedom Tower, but now called One World, is rising inexorably to reclaim the site's title as tallest in the city, even if our past successive tallest in the world titles have been claimed by Chicago and Dubai and Kuala Lumpur and I think Taipei. But most of us live down here at street level. How our economic life has changed since the attacks of September 11th, 2001, and how they are changing into the future is the topic of our discussion tonight. Some of the changes are visible, including the increasing layers of security around public and private buildings and the growing number of bike lanes that, depending on your view, enhance our city's livability or take away too damn much parking. But some are not so visible, including the growing disparities in wealth between the growing number of rich and the growing number of poor and those trying to hold on. Our political leaders, including Mayor Bloomberg and the City Council, have written green construction codes into law, and state legislation is cutting the amount of polluting heating oil used in building boilers. And while we remain dependent on the economic sectors known by the shorthand of FIRE for finance, insurance, and real estate, as well as the creative industries and entertainment and fashion, there has been a growth of smaller, high-tech manufacturing in places such as the Brooklyn Navy Yard, as one of our guests tonight hopefully will discuss. With the city population now over 8 million and growing, where will the jobs come to support this growth? And how do we ensure that growth yields not only a city whose prosperity is spread more widely, but one which is environmentally sustainable in the air, water, and streets we all share? We are joined by 4 New Yorkers who take part in that debate. Leroy Comrie is a city councilman from Southeast Queens who's deputy majority leader and chair of the Land Use Committee. Mary Barber is the campaign chair of the Energy Program for the Environmental Defense Fund. Mark Lieberman is an economist with economics analytics research and part of the CUNY TV family. And Alan Fishman is the chairman of Ladder Capital Financing and, among his many titles in civic engagement, chairs the boards of both the Brooklyn Community Foundation and the Brooklyn Navy Yard. Alan, let me start with you. I mentioned the Navy Yard. Everybody talks about the lack of manufacturing in this city. It's unlike when I grew up here. There was obviously more heavy manufacturing. The Navy Yard has been around and is kind of an incubator and is kind of, it's a future model, isn't it? Or it's a model, current model.
I think it's a model. It's 5,000 jobs, growing rapidly, about 4 million feet, growing also rapidly. We'll add another million or more feet in the next several years. The Navy Yard has 4 or 5 things that are critical: security, permanence, land and buildings, and it's really been taken up by a wide variety of large and small manufacturers. We separate out emerging companies to give them small spaces. We try to give them as much support as we can. And I think that in the Dumbo Navy Yard corridor, there is a genuinely emerging high-tech, applied tech industry of growing up. And it's good.
Mark, you're an economist. You look at this stuff. What are the growing sectors?
Well, the good news is,
which is also partly a question for these students sitting out here. What are the growing sectors?
Yes and no. Mm-hmm. The good news is the growing sector, the most growing sector, if that's the right phrasing, is one that can't move. It's tourism. It's about 10% of the jobs in the city are involved in tourism in one way or the other. And we're talking everything from stars on Broadway and entertainment to street vendors who are outside of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which in fact is the largest tourist attraction in the city, which is kind of interesting. And that hot dog vendor pays the most for his vending spot. But New York has surpassed Orlando as the destination city. Now the bad news of all this is they're among the lowest paying jobs. So we're not looking at all of those high paying jobs in the entertainment sector, Broadway stars and the like, but we're looking at people who are hotel maids, who are waitresses and waiters at restaurants. They don't make a lot of money, but that's where the jobs are growing.
Mary, you've seen, Mayor Bloomberg in particular is trying to make sustainability a hallmark of his administration. and there's a balance between economic growth and environmental protection. Has he handled that balance well? Is the city ahead of the rest of the country, ahead of the rest of the world?
I think the city is definitely a leader amongst great cities in the world and in the country. And I think the great news, I mean, balance, everything's a delicate balance. But certainly this mayor has done a great job of making sustainability a key piece of just about everything we think about. And in our view, that's really important, especially now. It shouldn't be a separate topic that we talk about. Sustainability needs to be woven into every aspect of our society, most importantly, our economy.
Leroy, your district was particularly hard hit in the recession in terms of foreclosures, and what Mark is talking about is kind of what's, I guess, described as the hourglass economic model, where you have more people at the top, more people at the bottom,
right,
and the middle getting squeezed. Is that a fair description of what's going on? Have people lost confidence?
Well, people have lost jobs. They haven't lost confidence, because I have a lot of people that are looking to come to my office to get job referrals. We've done 3 job fairs this year. We're going to do another one in November. People are looking for opportunities. I have homeowners. I have parents. They want to work. They want to take whatever opportunities out there. The foreclosure has hit my district really hard, because a lot of people purchased homes without having the due diligence or getting the proper training about how to buy a home, and they wound up purchasing a home at too high a price and not knowing that they had to pay taxes, not building in the fact they had to do utilities or insurance, and so I have a lot of people in trouble. My district also has a high number of civil servants. I think almost every union in the city. I have a major percentage of people that live in my district, and also I had a lot of people at back office Wall Street or banking jobs. So there's a lot of people with skills that are looking to be retrained in whatever sector comes up, and they're ready to go. They're ready to work. They just need the opportunity.
Alan, you're also in the financial industry. You had a number of positions. Same question I asked Mark, in terms of where do you see, what sector should people sitting here be looking at in terms of what the future of a job market is in New York City?
You know, I think that the financial industry is going to be tough for a while. I really do. I think that the way to get into the financial services industry right now, I think, is at the toughest level, which is, I would say, while you're at school, get on the teller line, work at a teller's place, and take advantage of the training programs that exist in the various banks. The hours are flexible, et cetera, et cetera. I think that at just the Steiner Studios, as one example of an industry,
which is located at the Navy Yard.
Right, which is a major Bloomberg administration initiative. I think they're on their 4th expansion, and there's probably at various times in a week, 1,500, 2,000 high-paying and medium-paying tech jobs, in addition to the acting jobs, of course. But the support in these things, it's a beehive of activity. So I think that I think the tourism industry broadly defined, I think the entertainment industry broadly defined, and I think the obvious sort of responses into financial services need to be rethought, because I don't think they're going to work as well.
Haven't there been some efforts by at least the Bloomberg administration to make things less comfortable for the TV industry, for example? I have some friends who work in that sector who are out on the streets doing location shooting, but there have been some crackdowns. There's no longer the same cooperation with the police department, with parking permits.
What has happened is, because of 9/11, they want to make sure that anyone that's shooting in the street has an actual permit. So they've increased the level of responsibility for you if you're going to actually shoot on the street. You have to get a proper permit. You have to pay a little bit more in fees, but they don't want to limit the industry. If anything,
well, I know, I do know that a lot of New York scenes are shot in Toronto.
Right.
There are also
that's also partly
scenes for other cities.
That's also partly a union issue.
But right now, New York has more television series than ever before being shot this year. In New York, the city, we were part with making sure that there was a tax credit for the movie industry that started back in 2003. That's really lent a boom to the industry, people coming here, because the major stars want to work in New York. They don't want to work in Toronto. They'll go to work in Toronto if they have to, but they'd rather work in New York. And right now, the Pan Am is being shot here. There's about 5 or 6 other shows that are being shot here. That are new shows, Blue Bloods. I could name at least 10 different shows. I don't know how much time I have that are being shot here.
The Pan Am plane is at a brand new studio that has just been finished, a new building that the Steiners have finished. It's an extraordinary achievement, really, and the state program has been terrific for the producers.
I mean, entertainment, for want of a better term, is a clean industry. It's the kind of, it combines technical abilities. They're by and large union jobs, which means that they're better paid and have, I'm talking about on the technical side, and setting aside the extras, which I once was in absence of malice. Got $35, but had to give $3.50 to the casting agent. But they're also jobs that don't impact on the environment of the city the way other jobs did.
Well, right. I mean, but I think as what you're kind of talking about, I think there's a real movement, and I think the mayor has been supporting this toward more clean tech. I mean, one thing I want to say, just moving it back to sort of the environmental piece of jobs, is that we really resist the whole notion of green jobs. Again, like I was saying, we can't keep separating sustainability and environmental and health safety as a separate topic. It needs to be part. So all jobs should be, quote, green jobs. And that means whatever industry it is, that industry should be
But there
approached.
is but there is, because of the growth of, I mean, working on the transit, working on the Second Avenue subway is in a sense a green job, both because of the construction standards being used and because of all the carbon it's going to take off of the city streets. I mean, so I think it's broadly defined. I think the mayor has defined green jobs quite broadly.
In the same way with all of the new laws around buildings and energy efficiency, will create more good jobs around maintaining a building. So yes, that's absolutely true.
The one sector you didn't mention is healthcare.
Healthcare is a major sector in the city, but it's more than just healthcare. The bioscience, technology, research that we have here. I mean, there are a lot of growth industries in the city. I turn to tourism when we first talked because it is so large. But we are home to 120,000 academics in institutions of higher learning, some of whom may even work here. We're home to so many biotech research firms. There's a lot of potential here in New York for growth sectors and growth industries. Part of it will depend on work that Councilman Comrie can do in terms of tax credits, because we have to make those investments. And people will have. I mean, the councilman talked before about confidence, and that's certainly been a big national issue when you have both parties disagreeing on how to create jobs.
Disagreeing on everything.
Well, yeah, that's true, that too. But they're talking about the lack of confidence and that's why businesses aren't investing. That's not, and that's why the economy isn't growing. That's not why the economy isn't growing. We need a job stimulation program, because if it were only a lack of confidence, you would, in making a permanent investment, whether that permanent investment be in a new plant or piece of equipment, or hiring a permanent worker. If that were the stumbling block, you would see more companies hiring temps. You would see them extending hours worked where they don't have to make those investments. But they're not doing that because, and the economist in me says, it's because there's a lack of aggregate demand, and that's what we have to do something to gin up.
When I'm not working in Brooklyn, I actually have a day job where we actually have a real estate finance business nationally, and I have to say that New York has survived this crisis better than other places.
Oh, absolutely.
In a vastly different way, and that is because banking and insurance are, relatively speaking, okay. Relatively speaking, entertainment's been terrific, and because of the dollar and whatever reasons, the city's tourism business has never been better. And so, as bad as it is, and it isn't, in Leroy's district and other places, it's sure a lot worse in other places around.
Well, we're seeing that. We're seeing the recession spreading, or the aftermath of the recession, although I would argue we're still in one. You're seeing that spreading to other sections of the country, And you're right, the financial sector is doing well, but you do read new headlines of Bank of America laying off 30,000 people, layoffs coming, according to recent news stories, at Goldman Sachs. So even the financial giants, continue to struggle under whether you're calling regulation.
Somebody brought up, I'm sorry, do you want to, somebody brought up tax incentives, and this is impressionistic. I believe this is correct, and correct me if I'm wrong. This mayor and this council has been less willing to kind of push the kinds of job-creating tax breaks that they're kind of closing the cookie jar to some degree on
there's a division in the city about whether or not you give tax breaks to developers and whether or not those tax breaks should also turn into living wage jobs. And that's a discussion that we could drill down into on 3 different levels. I'm chair of the land use committee of the city council, and there are a lot of developers that would really like to get work started. There are still developers that are looking to develop property. They met with a developer today that's looking to do a project in the South Bronx right along the Sheridan Expressway, redeveloping land that is toxic and is ready to put up affordable housing and put up a full community. So there are people that are willing to take time and investment and take risk in the city.
But would would that development depend on tax incentives?
What we can do is to give them also infrastructure credits, tax incentives, and also working with HPD, finding out low-cost loan programs for them. Just to give you an example, back to the biotech, the mayor has a biotech proposal that has excited over 30 different companies and 17 universities from all across the world that want to come to New York to set up this biotech center. When I met with EDC, I was excited to know that there was every major university from Stanford to the major universities in China, France, England, Sweden. They all want to team up with people here to set up this biotech center because we're giving them the land and $110 million in infrastructure. So there is a way to package New York City to make it attractive for people to come here. We just have to find out what those business needs are. And also, as you talk to small business people around the city, they really want capital dollars to invest, to reinvest in their business and to invest in new business. We have to find a way to either get federal dollars or generate other city dollars and tax incentives to help them. And that's something I've been championing as well.
How much is the threat of Walmart coming in? How much of a threat of that is that small business?
I think right now Walmart is doing a self-fulfilling hype, and they're promulgating an opportunity to put fear into people. But New York is a business that is a city that runs on entrepreneurism and small business. So Walmart's not going to all of a sudden come in next year with many stores. They have a long-term process to come in. It's more of something that they're trying to do to try to gin up a fear. But a good small business in the city is running well. They're making money. They're turning over businesses. They're hiring local people. So the whole Walmart issue, people want to be able to either shop by choice. And if you focus on one store, you're missing the greater picture. We need to take care of our local small businesses, Nunziano Florist in Glendale or Joyous Florist in Long Island City, or the local bodega, or, I have 2 businesses in my district, restaurants that want to find larger space because they're tired of just being takeout. They want to do sit down. We have to find a way to get them the capital, to get them the land, to get them the city tax credit so that they can expand also. We have to talk to our small business. One of the groups that I'm sitting on, as well as my 5 groups, is a task force to help get the city out of the way of small business regulations, and also to talk to businesses about what they need to expand. We did it with the laundromat in Steiner Studios. We were able to get rid of some burdens that were preventing him from being able to expand his business, and the harassment of being pushed by the city agencies to actually not be able to move forward because one agency would tell him you could do this, and the other agency would come next day and say you can't do this, and then they were trying to figure out, well, what can you do? So we have to clear up some of the archaic rules and some of the harassment on businesses. Businesses want to grow.
You know, this is partly a philosophical question, partly a practical question, as many questions are. The idea of the city offering tax incentives to lure people into the city or to keep people from leaving the city, as there's a whole range, a whole menu of tax incentives that obviously distorts the market. I mean, if there's any such thing as a market, but at the same time, it's a competition against other places. I mean, it's both a philosophical and a practical question.
I think it's a race to the bottom. And I think you've got to be very careful about a race to the bottom. I actually think...
In what sense?
Well, I mean, because I think no matter what you do in downtown Brooklyn to get an office tenant, New Jersey can do better. And is prepared to do better because they have a much more, I would argue, desperate situation. And they have a political environment that allows them to give these incredibly deep discounts. And I think that a combination of the state legislature, the city's administration, the council, have really taken a pretty thoughtful view of this whole subject. And I think they've come out in a pretty good place. And I think that, you know, we talk about it at the studios all the time, at the yard all the time with the Office of Management and Budget. And they're pretty thoughtful because if they continue the film credit program, you know, what's to prevent Louisiana from doing more, Canada from doing more, New Jersey, Connecticut, all these guys are trying to get, so I think fundamentally you've got to make the city a more attractive place to do business, which is part culture, part this, part that, and also part tax benefits, tax rates for everybody. I think the spot stuff, I think the state program, the old Empire Zone stuff, I think all of that's been discredited pretty good. And I think the state is onto a new idea. I think the governor's into a new place, and I think it's all good.
And I would add to that the environmental piece of the city and the open space and what we're seeing with taking back more for pedestrians, more green space is all crucial to exactly what you're talking about. That not only a business climate, but a place where people want to be to work and live their daily lives. If I could just take the incentive piece and relate it to environmental stuff a little bit. You mentioned in your opening remarks about the heating oil in the city, and there's a new rule in the city that's phased out the use of number 6 and number 4 heating oil. It's a minority of buildings, about 10,000 buildings, that causes more soot pollution than all the cars and trucks combined in New York City. So there is a rule, and it's going to be phased out, and it's difficult because it can be, and it's too complex to go into all the details, some of those switches can be rather expensive for a building, and we recognize in these economic times that's not easy. So many of the buildings are saying we need greater incentives, and the economy is not at such a place of being able to provide that, and you could debate whether that's a good idea or not. So what we've been engaged in, and the city too, is really trying to find and working with banks, other finance providers, to really look at the segments of housing that are affected by this and really trying to develop market solutions, not to just use that phrase glibly or lightly, but find ways that are going to work for buildings so that they are able to do this without hurting their bottom line.
Well, some of these kind of sustainability values are hard to quantify. I mean, how do you relate cleaning up the oil, this incredible pollution, to the lower number of asthma cases presumably you would have, and for the for the fact that's going to lower public health costs in the city, a whole range of ways in which you can't draw a direct linkage, but they're there.
And that's what I think. Again, the council I think has done a terrific job with the Office of Management and Budget at thinking these issues through. I really do, and I think the paradigm the city has, and the interagency thinking has really been terrific.
How about this? We're all being nice to the city council.
Hey, I wish the rest of the media would be, but
I'm not a reporter anymore.
But we've really been working hard, to try to make the city better. You have to make the city an attractive place for people to want to be. That beats the Jersey component.
But that's for both workers and business owners.
Workers and business owners.
So, I mean, yet the council has been sitting on a living wage bill. The council has been sitting on the sick leave bill.
Right.
Now, I understand the business arguments against that. How do you tell that to the worker who can't take a day off because her kid is
And
sick.
if they never take a day off, still can't afford housing in this city
Right.
because of the low
Exactly.
wage levels.
Well,
Yeah.
and those are discussions that we have to drill down into, because the living wage bill will create one panacea, but creates many other problems. The sick leave bill is too comprehensive. It will hurt small business as it is designed
Give
right
someone
now.
5 sick days a year?
If you have a business with 5 or 10 people and you have to all of a sudden add that on, it will hurt. It will kill a lot of small business.
And how many people come into work sick?
Well,
Because they
again,
can't take a sick day. I mean, think of it.
again,
There are costs on both
You can
sides.
play a simplistic answer against a real problem. Are we going to drive small business out of town in an economy that's teetering, or are we going to try to incentivize business by allowing them to continue to survive? And that's the reason why I haven't signed on the bill, because right now the bill is too comprehensive. It would hurt too many small businesses.
I guess the quintessential clash happened at the Kingsbridge Armory in the Bronx, where Related, I believe it was, wanted to go in and have a large development with significant city tax benefits to do that development in a site that had been vacant for a long period of time, and yet it was stopped because they would not agree to a living wage agreement. And the argument being that when you, and I remember somebody from the Manhattan Institute was here and saying, if you take the King's dime, you're subject to the King's rules.
I think it was the living wage of their tenants.
Of their
Their
tenants.
tenants had to sign on to the living wage,
Yes.
which meant that they would have a much more, they would have basically an uncontrollable way of controlling their tenancies, and they could not finance the project. Flat out, I wouldn't lend the money.
Frankly, it amounted to probably $2 an hour per employee.
I would not take that as a lender in this environment. I would not take that risk.
Which is why Related didn't go for it.
So let's be real clear.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's a
clear.
very good example
This
of the
is
clash.
private capital, needs to be until the federal government can finance every real estate project in the United States.
But it's private
which
capital.
they did in Fannie Mae.
Right, but it's private capital receiving significant public benefits.
But it was an indirect risk that they were taking. This wasn't Related saying they wouldn't sign a living wage agreement. It was Related not committing to force every tenant to sign a living wage agreement.
Right.
And therefore, it was a non-financeable project.
Right.
Do you have a?
No.
Okay.
I would have to agree with
sorry.
with Alan. Clearly, if the developer was developing the jobs, it would have been a different scenario.
Right.
But the developer was now going to be forced to ask every business to come in there to have a higher cost per unit than any other store that they would have in the city. And they couldn't, it just wasn't sellable. And it sounds palatable, it sounds wonderful, it's a panacea, but in the real world, it's not sellable.
You can't do it on an isolated basis.
Well, but it amounted to 1,000 jobs. I mean, I've always felt that when you
Yeah, but you have
that when you
6.6
have
million jobs in the city, so you
Right.
can't.
I understand
you can't
that.
apply it.
But when you have a public benefit, the public has more. The public expressed through the government policy.
But you can't make the cost of that job if say it's a Dunkin' Donuts, just or
uncompetitive with the
or
Dunkin'
Gap.
Donuts up the street.
Yeah, or Gap or what's the
Well, they wouldn't go.
Whatever the
wouldn't
kids
go.
are wearing, they wouldn't go because they'd have to pay higher costs than they would anywhere else in the city.
We're going to start to take some questions. Speak up, please, and tell us your name and your campus.
My name is Felix Ojas. I go to Queens College, and my question is for Alan
Fishman.
Fishman, sorry. You said that the financial industry is going to take a while to recover. With that, do you think that with everything that's going on credit-wise and money, is risk management and a career in or a degree in risk management, is it going to be an up-and-coming field or something that would be beneficial to someone like me in the next coming years?
You're coming from a guy that had a 40-year career that couldn't have been better in the financial services industry.
Okay.
And so I think that if you can figure out a way to get in, I think going in, as I said, I think the risk avenue in is fabulous. I think that we've seen a country that lost its mind about risk, and I think that things get done. So I do think that that's a very interesting way in. I would still argue that any way you can get in is a good way to get in right now.
And risk management is more than just the financial sector. Every industry sector has a risk component.
Sure.
And we've seen it, Bob, you and I have seen it in looking back over the New York Times.
In the
from
newspaper
journalism.
business, right.
I mean, there's a reputation risk that certain news organizations have suffered from. So risk management is more than just finance.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Peggy from John Jay College, and my question goes to Council Member Leroy. What are you doing to help those who lack the knowledge of like buying homes? So what are you doing to help educate them so that they wouldn't make the same mistakes?
I work with the Center for New York City Neighborhoods. We helped start that in the City Council. We also have Jamaica Neighborhood Housing Program right in my district that has a first-time home buyers program that will guarantee you that they give you the skills and the knowledge necessary to be an informed first-time home buyer. And they work still with a couple of banks that are still doing it. Once you finish the program, they will help you find a home. If you can call my office, 718-776-3700, we can get you in the program, or you can call 311 and ask for the Center for New York City Neighborhoods. Another thing that we did also with that is to create a financial planning center through the Center for New York City Neighborhoods for people that are trying to find out about financial planning. We find that a lot of people that, because the foreclosure market disaster hit because people weren't doing real financial planning. So the Center for New York City Neighborhoods and Department of Consumer Affairs have set up financial centers, one in each borough. We have one right at the in our district in Jamaica to help people with financial planning as well. So they should get on 311 or call my office, and we can put you in contact to get that for you, because we want everybody to eventually have a home.
A vacant home is, and you wind up with people being foreclosed on and those houses sitting vacant in neighborhoods as an urban environmental issue. There's linked to crime, is linked to neglect in a neighborhood, and it's the broken windows theory that if you don't fix that window right away, somebody's going to come along and break another one. I mean, is there a
Actually, that theory about homes is unfounded. I mean, economists have studied that about the increase in crime. Yes, it is true the house next door loses value and houses down the street, but there's no automatic increase in crime. In fact, it probably goes the other way, that there was an increase in crime, and that's why the homeowner walked away. One of the reasons why the homeowner.
Yeah, but the homeowner is walking away today because of the foreclosure crisis, because of the inability
But that
to keep
doesn't
up the
create more
payments.
crime in the neighborhood, is what I'm saying. That's been studied in umpty-dump times.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Mana Sabori, and I am from Queens College. And I want to make a statement before I ask my question. I do background work as well, and the Law and Order studio moved from New Jersey to the Chelsea Pier. So you're like, oh, we're scared of coming, into New Jersey. Well, it has moved into New York. My question, on a serious note, my question is, why has the income for the middle class have not significantly increased in the past 40 years? It has remained static between $40,000 and $50,000. Why is that?
Oh, I suppose that turns.
You're the economist.
I wish I knew.
You say you're
I
the
wish I knew
economist,
too.
Mark. Here we go.
No, I mean,
Right.
one of the reasons. I mean, these are aggregate statistics that are done.
And we don't live in aggregates. We live one by one. Right.
Exactly. And when you have, over the course of the recession, we lost about 7 million jobs nationally. And among those who were continuing to work, hours went down the equivalent of another 2.6 million jobs. So if you take the wages that were earned and change the denominator in the equation, you're going to find a lower average wage, and therefore a lower household income.
I think, in addition to that, I think technology is dramatically changed. You see at the Navy Yard, you see it all over the country. You see intricate engineering designs being worked on and patterns being designed and clothing being designed, and then with the click of a button, it goes around the world and right into machines that cut the stuff and sew the stuff. And so I think that you've got a situation where if you're not at the cutting edge of figuring out how to make those machines, it gets harder to get a middle class wage that's growing rapidly.
Plus you see in some of those what used to be called emerging markets where that kind of lower skilled jobs and lower paid jobs were going. The Chinas, the Indias of the world, to some degree Vietnam. those are places that have developed, that have grown so much that it's almost they're looking to offload that into even lower prices.
Talk to a Chinese businessman today. What is he interested in? He's not interested in doing low-end computer work or assembly work. He's facing exactly the same problem that the Japanese faced in the 70s or 60s, the Koreans faced in the 70s and 80s, and that is they need brands. They need to build businesses that have value added, and you know, it's not enough for them to be building Nike shoes, because they know that there's always going to be another country building those Nike shoes cheaper than the one they got. So they need to build brands, and it's in a global world. These are global brands, and it's a real serious problem. And the impact on quite frankly, not fully college educated people. It's just tougher. It's much more difficult. That's
kind of a real race to the bottom. That is very destructive in a country like ours, where we couldn't even begin to dream of, you know, nor would we want to dream of matching those kinds of wage scales and stuff. So, yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Walid from Hunter College, and I have a question that will be addressed to Mr. Mark Lieberman, and anyone who want to touch on this question too. Recently, top New York politicians are pushing and expressing their support for legalizing casinos. Do you think that legalizing casinos will improve the New York economy by bringing the tourism industry to the state, or will it hurt poor communities?
Well, it will go back to bringing low-wage jobs. Yes, it will increase the number of tourism jobs, but there's the moral aspect, and I'm not going to get into the moralism of whether gambling is good or bad. I don't know that it's the type of jobs that represent a growth sector that I'm not necessarily going to have as an ambition for my kid to grow up to be a teller or a dealer in a casino. Bob, you tell me, either your daughter's going to do that? I don't think that's not a future.
My little one likes poker, but that's
okay.
I would have loved it for my kid to become a teller as part of his college education.
A teller at a bank, you mean?
Teller at a bank.
Yeah, I'm a dealer at a...
Or a teller at a casino. The question was about casino.
Well, and if there's a path forward from that teller position, as you mentioned before, training programs and all of that.
We don't. I mean, you don't hire. We're not hiring CEOs anytime soon. I mean, we're hiring people starting, and I think I think one of the things that we've gotten away from is starting at the bottom. I think as a country, we've stopped starting at the bottom. And I say it to my own kids, get going, just go do something. And it'll work out for you.
Right. Well, I can say that my daughter's first job out of college was as an usher at a movie theater. So.
Okay.
I mean, what about your community and the question of casinos? Well, we'll be at Aqueduct. The first
Aqueduct is not quite in my district, but it's close to my district. And, you know, I think that if they're doing casinos everywhere else, they should do casinos in New York, too. I have so many buses that move out of my district to go to Atlantic City, to go to Mohegan Sun, or wherever else they're going to play. I'm not crazy about the whole casino thing because it does. I have pawn shops opening up all near the Aqueduct area. Because they believe that people are going to hock their whatever they have to go play. So there's a negative side to it also. So, but the reality is if people from my district are leaving every Saturday or every day to go to Atlantic City, they might as well have a full-service casino here as well.
Very destructive. I probably am against casinos because I like to gamble. I don't want to close.
Right. That's the problem.
Hi, my name is Carla Montalvo, and I'm from Queens College. And my questions really regard towards Mark. Earlier, Mary had mentioned that all jobs should be green jobs, and that building energy efficient would create more jobs in the industry right now. Regarding cost-benefit analysis, some of my professors have actually stated that in our economy today, creating jobs is more of a cost than a benefit. Would you agree or disagree, and why?
Well, I think there's a basic formula that a company would use in creating a job or hiring someone. And it's very simply a metric of revenue per employee or profit per employee. They're not going to hire somebody in the hope or just to be patriotic or altruistic. They want some real return for that investment that they're making. Mary, you can speak better to the idea, you spoke before that there are no such thing as green jobs. There are, though, what I would consider tech jobs that have an environmental benefit. Solar panel installations, solar panel creation, for example. Those would have to be growth industries. They're not as relevant here as they are in other parts of the country, perhaps. But there are other opportunities for us here, I would think. But again, the basic metric is I'm not going to hire someone unless that individual can produce as much revenue as I'm paying that individual.
Well, and I think what I can add in terms of the green piece of that is, for instance, in our buildings, of which we have an abundance of, and where there is a move to make them more efficient, there is a real business case for doing that, which is a good reason to hire people in order to reap those benefits, which is that basically by running a more efficient building and all your systems, you're going to lower your operating costs. And so that's an economic
Well, and there's a social benefit. You're going to be lowering your operating cost on your budget, and you're going to be lowering your impact on the community around you.
Yes, but even we in the environmental world recognize
That people have to make money.
That the business case often has to be there, and so we're constantly trying to make sure that people understand that it is there in many cases.
But yet, I mean, I think Alan was making the point in terms of whether you want to take an office to Jersey or an office or keep it here in New York City, understanding that there's going to be a higher per unit cost, is that the value of the city itself, that the city itself is a value added that's very hard to quantify,
Right,
in
exactly.
terms of but it's clear to those of us who live here.
Absolutely, and there's all kinds of reasons that people locate in the Navy Yard. In some cases, it's close by to their churches and synagogues, their businesses. They're near their markets. They're making manufacturing high-end furniture, and they can install the kitchens and the furniture in apartments around houses around the city. Moving art. We have our biggest LEED certified new building is been rented 100% to an art management company, an art handling company, an art restoration company that is doing business in the city and near the museums. So it's a big economy, and you can't be too clever about it. All you got to do is, as Leroy said, you got to get the environment right. You've got to get the tax planning and the policies right, and you got to let people get on with it.
You know, one thing I would add, though, about keeping the city, and that the city in itself, people want to come here and live here and work here. One thing that's really important that we have to all keep our eye on is our transit system. And our transit system is always in trouble in terms of its long-term financing. And I think there has to be, I mean, a lot of us talk about it a lot of times, and there's a lot of, quite frankly, lip service paid to its importance, but at some point, and we're going to see this soon because the MTA's capital plan is up, and there's got to be some real creative thinking. I think there's got to be some risk taking actually in what the city or the state really is willing to do in order to support that, because the transit system really is the backbone of our city.
Well, it's, as I learned when I had a bicycle 8 miles each way to work in the transit strike in 25-degree weather and was able to make it, but when I came to the hill at 97th Street, it seemed like it was like this, but it was actually only like that. But that's because I'm old. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Maria Yuzi, and I'm from Brooklyn College. My question is an economical one. Due to the recent revision by the European Union to international trade policies, how can we see that affecting the value of the euro to the dollar? And will that be in the recent future, the near future, or is that a distant type of transition?
It's not a distant factor, but trying to predict the value of the dollar, there are so many moving parts in this. The Federal Reserve actions come into play and what the Federal Reserve is doing to our money supply. The most important thing we have to do now, and what we have to concentrate on now, and I'm not dismissing the importance of the value of the currency, but we have to get into real job creation. There was a speech earlier this week, by a member of the Federal Reserve Board who tried to connect the dots between monetary policy and the creation of jobs. And that's, if the Federal Reserve, which is our central bank and critical to monetary policy, is concentrating on job creation, not only because it's one of its 2 legislative mandates, but concentrating on it because that's the backbone of our recovery. I hate to use the word backbone.
But we started talking about on a very local level, confidence, about people, the confidence of people in Southeast Queens, for instance. The confidence that Greece is going to pay its debts. What is that on a macro level? Why should people here, why do we care about whether Greece can pay its debt?
I think connecting the dots, I would say that if you're running a bank today and you're facing uncertainty, increased uncertainty, as I just argued, you faced the uncertainty up in the Bronx in the Armory there, I think that your decision is, I'll do nothing. I'll sit on my hands. And so the uncertainty that our government, quite frankly, in Washington created with the debt ceiling and that nonsense, coupled with the real crisis in Europe and the twists and turns that have to occur in Europe, I think are fundamentally we have to get beyond that before we can get a real recovery. That said, when we talk about exchange rate, there was a question about exchange rates. Don't forget the Chinese currency. The Chinese currency is among the very few large currencies that is basically manipulated and managed. And I think that
as opposed to floating freely
in the market. And I think you could argue that as China matures quickly here, right in this crisis period, I think you'll have to see them begin to allow their currencies to move around. Now, if you ask the Chinese government what's their biggest fear in life, it's that they got to provide, I think, 2.5 million new jobs every month, to their population. That's a big number. And they're not about to forget that. That's
and they view that the strength of the yuan is key to be able to keep
all very complicated.
To Alan's point about uncertainty and banks just not doing anything, when the TARP was passed back in 2008,
that's the Troubled Asset Relief Program as part of the original response to
the banking crisis.
Commercial
banks were sitting on about $700 trillion in cash. They're today sitting on $700 billion. They're now sitting on $3 trillion.
Mm-hmm. And as Everett Dirksen said, $1 trillion here and $1 trillion there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money.
Said that, yeah.
He said that about billions, but now
yeah,
we say
exactly.
it about. I'm just modernizing it.
Hi, my name is Boyd Greenaway. I'm from John Jay College. My question is to Councilmember Comrie. You discussed making the city attractive for businesses, but the fact is businesses can't survive without a labor force. And in the city, jobs are scarce, wages are low, and housing costs remain incredibly high. What is the city, what is the mayor's office doing about this? Because this is, I believe, is the main problem that's squeezing the middle class, is these never-ending rise in housing costs.
Well, as the city becomes more attractive, housing invariably goes up. You could go from anywhere from Dumbo to 15 years ago to Dumbo now, to Soho to NoHo to they're trying to rename districts, areas in my district now, because it's just the people want to move here. People are moving here in droves. So we have a labor force that's coming in. The trick is for the city to realize how to capture that labor force, how to get them into jobs, how to find things that they're interested in doing as well. As Alan said earlier, we have too many people that want to start at the top. I started at putting up posters and standing at street corners. I didn't become a councilman overnight. It took me 20 years to get to where I am now. But people want it in an instant. So we have to get people out of an instant mentality. We have 2 job force centers in my district. People don't go to them. I'm amazed at how many people I talk to that don't go to them, are not aware that they're there. They can do everything from resume preparation to job research, personal management to show you how to get dressed and do everything necessary to get a job. It's amazing to me in this information technology age where most people have a cell phone, they can go on the internet, that they don't look up local job search. And it's amazing to me how many people want to be hand-fed as opposed to getting out there and putting leather to the ground and finding opportunities out there. It's not a time to be reticent about putting putting in some elbow grease and putting in some real time to find a job. It's not also a time to create your own opportunities and to create entrepreneurship, because that's really the other thing that people are not really trying to take on, their own opportunities to make a product or to make a development. My daughter came up with an app. I have to find a company that develops apps, you know, because she's on her own decided that there was an app that could make some money. But you have to take that opportunity and make it a reality. You just can't wait for it to be handed to you. We're no longer living in a society where things are going to be given. Things have to be achieved through people actively working towards it.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Evelyn Puchard. I go to John Jay College, and my question is for Council Member Comrie. You have spoken earlier about tax breaks for the businesses, but at one point do these tax breaks become excessive and it's no longer a race to the bottom, but actually getting to the bottom?
Well, when I was talking about tax breaks earlier, I'm talking about things that are double taxation, not necessarily giving large companies a 20-year tax incentive. I'm talking about things where the health department would come in and write 30 tickets on a business because they don't like the way that they are doing their food prep, or they don't like the way they're storing something. I'm talking about
sanitation department.
Sanitation department. I'm talking about relieving tax burdens and unnecessary tax burdens on people as well. But I'm also talking about not trying to do too many tax burdens on a business, such as paid sick leave, where the city's already one of the most onerous places for business taxes now, and between the paid sick leave push and the living wage push, there will be two very tax-laden, not direct taxes, but it would be issues that would rise the cost of business up that would really hurt a lot of businesses in the city. So we have to be very judicious about the legislation that we propose, and that's one of the things that I've been promoting, because we have to relieve that burden on local businesses. We have to decrease their cost of doing business so they can stay in the city. So I'm not talking about tax incentives, I'm talking about tax breaks.
One of the real reasons people come and look at the Navy Yard for space is that they know that their trucks, A, are not going to get stolen, and B, they're not going to get tickets all day long. And I can't say it enough. The streets, the industrial streets of East Williamsburg and Long Island City and Maspeth and these places, people come to the Navy Yard exactly for that reason.
Very quickly, yes.
I'm Shivani Jackson. I'm from Borough Manhattan Community College, and my question is to Mary. Is there anything you would want us to tell anyone that wants to create their own business? Any advice you would give them?
Quickly, who has advice to start your own business?
Oh my goodness.
Go to your uncle or your aunt.
I would also go back to Workforce One centers. We have the Jamaica. Each CUNY college has a local. At York College, we have the local business development center, which will help you frame out from concept to implementation how to start a business or how to become an entrepreneur. So I believe it's at Hostos. I know it's at York. I believe it's at Brooklyn College as well. CUNY is a vast array of opportunities for people that are interested in starting their own business, doing the research behind business. I'm a big CUNY supporter. You know, that's why I do everything I can in the City Council to make sure that CUNY gets every opportunity possible, because it's such a great incubator for creating our next level of geniuses and hopefully entrepreneurs and business people.
And then if I can, that's great in terms of the nuts and bolts of how, but if you're talking about starting your own clean, green business, I would say if you don't have your idea already, read as much as you can about what's going on in the clean tech industries, read all that's going on with these new companies, and look at the technology side and try and pair your passions and your interests with what's happening in those areas.
You know, the question that was from BMCC as a community college, and of course one thing we haven't touched on is education to a significant degree in terms of training the workforce of the future. Community colleges, I know you're a great believer in those as, you know, generators of an educated workforce. below, I mean, in high schools as well.
Absolutely.
There's more than, we need more than that. I mean, we have 35% of New York City's workforce has a bachelor's degree or higher. What we don't have, and in the past several years, we've essentially eliminated vocational high schools.
Exactly.
And
There's one vocational high school in New York City.
Yeah.
On 96th and between 1st and 2nd. One.
We're not preparing students for jobs. Not everyone necessarily has to go to college.
Well, when I was a kid, people were being trained for trades, and those trades, by and large, do not exist in large numbers in New York City.
Sure they do.
But others do.
They don't exist to the degree that they do.
Oh, they do. They're just different trades.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you
That's
have
the
to,
point.
right, you have to have a different kind of training maybe. Like I keep talking about the buildings that we have in New York. I mean, those are trades. Who's operating, those HVAC systems and all of that?
Right. So, I mean, to what degree are they, I'm never going to speak down to the value of a liberal arts education. I think it prepared me. But how conscious are you all? We have less than a minute left. So in less than a minute, explain the entire educational system. What it's going to mean to our future.
Listen, I think that if you're interested in something, go for it. This is an opportunity in the world that you can research anything you want to do. You can do CUNY, almost get involved in any career. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to find out. Don't be afraid to get references about what it is that you want to do and find a way to get there. There are plenty of people in CUNY. There are plenty of people in the city that if you have a desire to make something happen, you can.
I want to thank everybody. This is, this is a city we're going to leave to you all sitting here in the audience, and a lot of these, a lot of the folks at home. And I guess we have to be confident in the future. I have to be because I have a 8th grader and a 10th grader.
Yeah, I got
Good luck.
So if
You'll
I'm
be
not,
fine.
I got a 12th grader and an 8th grader.
A 12th grader and an 8th grader. Those carry their own problems. But that's a whole different issue. I want to thank you all, and we'll see you next time on CUNY Forum.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody stay seated. Okay.